Good afternoon. I'm Captain Sasha Larkin. I'm the captain of Summerlin Area Command, Metro 10th U.S. Station. Today I'm here representing all 10 Area Command captains and captains all around the LVMPD. In light of all the events happening around the city, around this community, and around our country, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department decided it would be best if we had one united virtual First Tuesday. This is the second month that we've held virtual First Tuesday. We had such overwhelming positive feedback from the first one we did last month. We felt it would only be best if we kept going on this track and offered a second virtual First Tuesday, even though things seem to be in such chaotic flux right now. Please know that I speak today for all the Bureau commanders. They all wanted to be here, but everybody has been working around the clock to keep the calm to the chaos. All of the other Bureau commanders, no matter what area command you live in, are here represented in these notes and in this messaging today. And most importantly, I come to you with the voice of our leader, Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who has led us through some of the most trying times our city has ever seen, from the violence and horrific events of 1 October to the COVID crisis we've experienced as a community and as a country and as a world the last 3 months, to now this unprecedented civil unrest. And for that, we are so grateful for Sheriff Lombardo's leadership and all of his executive staff. We wanted to have an open, honest conversation today talking about the events that we're seeing unfold across the country. By now, you have no doubt seen the horrific video and images of violent protest sparked by the murder that happened in Minnesota. We all events unfolded before our eyes, all feeling helpless. And helpless is the only word that I can really find to communicate the power of the event that we saw that day in Minneapolis. A feeling of helplessness and disgust. I can say there's no legitimate policy or police department in the country that believes putting your knee on somebody's neck is a sanctioned maneuver. We don't train it, we don't teach it, we don't sanction it, we don't allow it. It has never been part of the training or anything that any police officer in the LVMPD or in the state of Nevada has been trained or taught. Nor do we ever think it's a good idea, it's never funny, it's never something that the sheriff would allow. In the uniform that we all wear, the uniform that the LVMPD proudly displays. But when I go home and take this uniform off, like so many out there, I am a parent, I'm a mother, I am a daughter, I'm a wife. And I'll be honest, I was personally horrified. And so was every police officer that I know around the country and honestly around the world to see what happened. So let's have that honest conversation about police reform. Listen, the LVMPD is no stranger to police reform. In 2000, which has been 8 years now, the LVMPD bravely and courageously, at that time Sheriff Doug Gillespie, called the Department of Justice, and we voluntarily went through the reform process because we knew as a police department we had so much growth and maturation to go through. We knew that we were not doing everything perfect. We knew that when it came to use and force investigations, when it came to officer-involved shootings, we had a lot of growing to do. And more importantly, on top of process, was earning community trust. Because we are only as good as the verified community legitimacy that stands behind us and supports us. And that is you, Las Vegas community, that is you. Without we don't have the legitimacy. 2012, when we went through that reform process, every police officer, every employee on this police department went through it with the agency. We all took a bias-based policing class. And I oftentimes get asked, well, what does that mean? Did you learn that you don't like certain races or certain ethnicities? No, it doesn't mean that at all. The way that the instructor explained it to us at the very beginning is a really simple way that I can explain it to you. She asked us, how many of you prefer Chevy cars? Some of us raised our hand. How many of you prefer Ford cars? Another group of people raised their hand. And she said, would those of you that drive Fords ever drive a Chevy? And of course, the over resent, and vice versa. And she said, see, you all have a bias. You all have a bias. So having a bias isn't necessarily good or bad. It's something that we were taught to be aware of. It's something that training taught us, that no matter how perfect or how pure we all think we are or we all want to be, biasness is something that happens through the course of our life. We learn it maybe in our families, in our communities, in our schooling. To have awareness of, so we couldn't and wouldn't let it affect the style and manner in which we policed our community. So how does that translate into what we're seeing today? What does the difference between Ford and Chevy have anything to do with these violent protests we see erupting all around our community? Well, the truth is the community feels as though police departments around the country have bias. And we realized when we went through this process 8 years ago, we probably weren't aware of, at the level we needed to be, any biases that we as individuals or we as a police department had or didn't have. Listen, our use of force policy, it was created in conjunction with community members. How many police departments can say that? We sat down at a table with community members from every major community, may it be the Sikh community, the Muslim community, the African American community, the Jewish community, the LGBT community, and we asked them for input on all of our major critical incident policies, from use of force to social media. And we said, hey, when you read our policy, what are we missing? What does this policy not have? Or what does it have that feels like it's targeted at one certain group? And I will tell you that community leaders from all around this valley brought incredible viewpoints to give us, to reform our policy and to make it what it is, which is the leading policies in the country today. We recently trained all of our department members on a new department policy that includes putting people in a recovery position. The recovery position is simply what Mr. Floyd needed on that day. After we take somebody into custody, may they be handcuffed or had they been in some sort of physical altercation with our officers, once we have them restrained with handcuffs in a safe position, and if they're on their stomach, we roll them onto their side. This is to prevent positional asphyxiation, which is where the pressure from them laying on their chest after a critical incident puts their heart in a compromised position where they're not able to pump blood as efficiently or get breath as easily, and it can cause them to go into either cardiac arrest, be short of breath, or just the sheer pressure, depending on the size of the subject, can cause them to have short of breath and eventually go into a position where they can't breathe and they die. Listen, we train this recovery position every time we train defensive tactics. It's something that's done often. It's something that leadership on this department talks about time and time again with our police officers. We train it, we teach it, we test it over and over again. So department members and so these officers using these tactics understand them, and they know that anytime a subject is taken into custody, the first thing they're thinking about is this person breathing? Because we have to have that recovery position follow any force used. Here's the other thing, Las Vegas. The police department recruits from the human race. All police officers aren't perfect, but we recruit, we hire from, and we train the human race. So like any other profession out there, sometimes there's police officers that come in, that make it through the background process, who have ill intentions, who make very poor decisions. And we are never proud. And I will tell you this police department believes in transparency and accountability. Those are two words that we learned the very first week of the police academy. Transparency, which is integrity and being honest and upfront and getting things out there. And accountability, which means courage to stand up when you've done something wrong. Courage to be accountable for your actions, for your mistakes, for your poor choices. We train it, we teach it, we live it, we breathe it. Our officers know that if they lie, they get fired. We don't stand for it, we don't accept it, we don't tolerate it. We'll never be perfect, but I will tell you this, Las Vegas community, we are open to learning, to criticism, to critique, and to the great ideas that will give us real change as we move forward. We want to grow, we are adaptable, and we will continue as a police department to change and better ourselves. No matter what we get right or what we get wrong, we will never stop learning. But at the end of the day, let's talk about these protests, because it's what is now filling our news channels 24 hours a day. As these protests spread across the country, police officers all across the country are there to ensure civil order. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. Unfortunately, what starts out as very peaceful protests are drawing a dangerous criminal faction intent on committing felony crimes, felony acts, harmful, violent felony acts. Some groups are even using these events, these peaceful protests, as opportunity to systematically break in and loot businesses that have been suffering for the last 2 or 3 months because they've been closed or partially closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here these businesses are so happy and grateful to finally have the opportunity to open, and now these people intent on causing harm are going to come in and break the windows and loot these businesses? For what? That's not how real change is brought about. That's not how to get the voice that you want to be heard. In many of these cases that we see, however, officers have arrested these individuals before serious damage was done. We will not stand for it. In other cases, criminals are bringing hammers, baseball bats, fireworks, incendiary devices to cause harm, provoke officers, and agitate crowds and crowd goers to go from peaceful protest to riots. For days now, our officers have just endured being yelled at, profanity, for hours on end. They get rocks thrown at them, bottles, frozen things, and other objects that cause real harm. We've had over 28 police officers injured in the last couple of days. All in the pursuit of protecting your First Amendment right. We have a young officer right now at UMC fighting for his life. Shane Michelonis has been on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for 5 years. He is 29 years old, fighting for his life. So we ask you to take a moment and say a prayer, because he needs a miracle right now. His family is there with him, by his side, hoping for that miracle. So I want to talk to you about what we need to make these protests peaceful.
We have a few questions. Please explain to people what a dispersal order is.
So the question was, what is a dispersal order? Listen, to be clear, an order of dispersal is given at these protests when they go from peaceful protests, obviously, to these more violent, aggressive ones, when really we've lost all order in the street. In other words, when people begin to assault our officers, when they begin to be breaking the laws, throwing objects, and causing real harm. If an officer tells you to disperse and a dispersal order is read, and if you do not listen, you are breaking the law. The officer will issue the order every 10 minutes for 30 minutes and informs you or the people in the crowd of the consequences if you do not disperse. If there is a still failure to disperse at that point, officers have the ability to use tear gas and or pepper balls to get the crowd to disperse promptly.
So tell us what happens next with the National Guard.
So there's been a lot of questions about the National Guard. The National Guard will begin partnership with the LVMPD this evening. They will be spaced throughout the valley. You may see them in some of your neighborhoods. You may see them on the Strip. They will be partnered with our officers to ensure that lawful civil order is maintained.
What happens, though, when a police officer you feel has violated your civil rights? What do you do as a citizen?
So if you're out there in a community and you feel like your civil rights have been violated, you absolutely have the right to call Internal Affairs here at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They will take every single call. De-escalation means that the cops are involved in some sort of situation that is becoming tense, and that we have a choice. We can either escalate the conflict or we can use de-escalation tactics to bring it down. Our policy, LVMPD policy, very clearly covers de-escalation, meaning how we use force to calm a situation. And every situation is different, Beverly. They're not all the same. So I can't give you one canned answer for how we use it. But just know that we train our cops in verbal tactics to de-escalate. Sometimes we train them to retreat, but sometimes de-escalation is moving forward and taking someone into custody because that will de-escalate a situation. So it all depends and is situational dependency in those techniques. But just know that our cops use it on every scenario that they are able to.
How has all the unrest been for the police officers themselves? I mean, how stressful is it? What does this do to their outlook on their job?
So the question that came in is, how does this civil unrest affect the police officers? You know, it's just as the rest of the community has been going through the COVID pandemic for the last few months, we are not immune to that. Where a lot of people stayed home in quarantine and had to finish homeschooling and all of these other very tumultuous things, we kept coming to work. We didn't miss a day of work. We keep lacing up our boots and coming to work and making sure that we continue to be the calm to the chaos out there. So that if you were quarantined at home or if you were deemed an essential employee like all of our healthcare workers, our brothers and sisters at the fire department, you had to keep coming to work. It was a time that we really had to remind our police officers that no matter what the emergency is or what's affecting our community, it was our job to continue to be the peace, to continue to keep the peace and the calm. It's stressful on the cops. It's stressful on their families. Their families worry that they're going to get exposed to the virus. They worry that they're going to bring it home. But the cops valiantly every single day come to work because they know how important their presence is out there to keep the peace. So how has it affected our cops? It's exhausting. But they would not want to be anywhere else rather than be on the streets of Las Vegas ensuring your safety.
What have you heard about tonight?
Tonight, I know that there is some peaceful prayer vigils scheduled. We are hopeful and we implore you, Las Vegas community, the word there is peaceful. We support your First Amendment right to peacefully protest, to peacefully come together in prayer, because that's how we start to make real, positive, lasting, impactful change. And does there need to be change? Absolutely. Every community has room for change and growth, but it's done through peace, it's done through time, and it's done through collaborative partnerships.
People have talked about the idea of a curfew. Is that something the department could make work?
Sheriff Lombardo, I'm sure, is considering all options at this point. The question was about curfews. I know the sheriff is working very closely with other elected officials, to include the mayor, the governor, city council, county commission, to make sure that the best laws, practices, and procedures are put into place. And if they deem that necessary, that directive will come from him.
Deb Brooke was asking, what can people do to help Metro? What can people do to help Metro?
Thank you, Deb, so much for your question about what you can do to help Metro. Listen, the community support that you guys provide is everything. Thank you. Thank you for all the emails, the phone calls, the Facebook messages, thanking the police officers. Those of you that see police officers maybe out in the community and you stop them and say thank you for your service. Listen, Deb, that's huge. That goes a long way with these officers, because the majority of the time when they're out there at these protests, they're getting spit on, kicked, and things thrown at them. So when you guys, the community, come together and say thank you, it means so much. But most importantly, what you can do is remember 4 very important words. See something, say something. It's a program that we've had working for over a decade here in the Valley. At any time, 24/7, you can call our watch desk at 702-828-7777. That's a direct line to our 24/7 hotline that will report suspicious activity. And nothing is too big or too small. We will never laugh at you. We will never tell you that you're wrong, and we'll never turn your call away, because it's you, the community, that's going to see when something isn't right. And I will tell you, there's so many things that you guys report to us that prevent crime and terrorism on a daily basis. So thank you for your vigilance, and please keep it up.
And what's the outlook for the future? How many days do you foresee this protesting goes on?
The question is, what is the outlook for the future? Well, our outlook is that with partnership with you, the community, we're going to get through this. There's no doubt. We are resilient. Listen, Las Vegas, if there's one thing that we got to prove on 1 October, is it is Vegas stronger. We are resilient, and we will get through this. We need all of your help. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your social media friends. Please, spread peace. Spread the ability to be the calm to this chaos. And if you want to sit down and protest, please, do it peacefully. use your religious communities, use your community groups to help push out that you, the community, doesn't want to stand for this violence.
And what do you want to say to the majority of the community who are praying for the healing of our city? What would you like to say, Captain, as it relates to the prayer for the healing of our city?
So the question was, what do we want to say for the prayer and healing of our city? You know, that's probably my favorite question, because in the Las Vegas community, we have such an abundance of divergence of religious gatherings, of religious communities. You know, for the last couple of years, I've had the pleasure of being a captain in an area where we house the 8 major religions. And what a gift to see them all come together for a united cause. We just finished the holy month of Ramadan with the Islamic community. And as we brought them all together, one message that they all had was how powerful the message of peace is. And when all of the communities join together to share that message, it has reverberations that are felt across the Las Vegas Valley. So as you go to your groups, your families, your religious places of worship, and you bow your head, please pray for the safety of these police officers, pray for Officer Michelonis and his family, and pray that good will overcome evil, because at this time, Las Vegas, we have to stand together, united for peace.
One last question. How big is the problem of rumors, stuff that's being shared on the internet? It's got to be overwhelming.
How big is the problem of rumors on the internet was the question. Listen, I know that the way the majority of people, especially the younger generations, get their news is via the internet, via Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, right? Some of these places that it's just more accessible. It's a touch of a finger. There's so much false news. There's so many stories that are put out that are not accurate. Please, before spreading those around, take the time to verify. Just know that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department believes in the core values of I care. We come to you with transparency every time we have a use of force incident that involves an officer shooting. We come to you with accountability every time we do something that could be questioned by the community. And we come to the community groups, the Sheriff's Multicultural Advisory Council, which has been around for over 2 decades, that advises the sheriff and executive staff on decisions made and policy changes. And for those of you that don't know, we had a program called Adopt a Cop that we've used in the academy, the police academy, for the last few years, where we expose these police officers to groups of the community they would never otherwise have exposure to. So they become well-rounded officers. They become officers that see the community as a whole instead of as segregated populations. So what you have to remember is, we see you as whole. We don't see color, we don't see racial divide, we don't see red or blue, black or brown, white. We see the Las Vegas community that we are sworn to protect and serve. We are here to make sure there is civil peace, civil rest, civil obedience. So today, please, join us in prayer. Join us in making sure we bring our community back. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are Vegas Stronger. Thank you for joining us today for our second virtual First Tuesday. And thank you for allowing me to represent all the area commands and bureau commanders, and most importantly, our leader, Sheriff Joe Lombardo. I wish you a happy, healthy, and safe night tonight as we go forward, and may God bless you.